Frame data is the mathematical foundation for all actions that occur in a fighting game. It is the explanation for everything you see and everything you do, or at least how long it takes to occur, how long it lasts, and for how long before you can do something else. As the name implies, frame data is a measurement of the speed of an action, measured in frames. Most modern games aim to run at 60 frames per second, and so that means there are 60 frames in a second, 30 frames in half a second, 15 frames in a quarter of a second, and so on until 1 frame in a 60th of a second, or 0.167 milliseconds per frame. When looking at a move in Tekken 7, or any fighting game for that matter, there are 3 stages of frame data that need to be considered. That is, the startup frames, the active frames, and the recovery frames. The startup frames refer to how long it takes for the initiation of a move until the move can actually make contact. During this time, the move cannot deal damage, and if another attack makes contact with your character, the attack will receive counter hit properties. For most characters in Tekken 7, from a standing position, the fastest startup of a move is 10 frames. The active frames refer to the time period when the move is able to make contact and deal damage to the opponent. Most moves in Tekken 7 only have 1 or 2 active frames, and so the time period of the move being able to make contact is very short. The properties, including the damage and the state the opponent is placed in, will not change even if the move doesn't make contact until a later frame, which can result in a greater reward for the user during the recovery frames. As mentioned before, hitting an opponent with an attack during your active frames, while they are in the startup of a move, will give the move counter hit properties. As of Tekken 7, if 2 moves make contact during their active frames, both moves will receive counter hit properties. Last but not least, the recovery frames refer to the time after the move is active before another action can be performed. During this time, you will be completely vulnerable to any attack the opponent performs, as you cannot block until the recovery frames have ended, and any move that makes contact during this time will receive normal hit properties. While these frames are set for each move for the user, they may differ whether or not the move makes contact, and should the move make contact, the opponent will be susceptible to recovery frames as well, whether it be blocked or whether it hit. It's a common scenario that either you or your opponent will perform a move that results in frame advantage that does not provide a combo or punishment, and in this situation we can use frame data to instead formulate a frame trap. A frame trap is a situation in which a character uses their frame advantage to perform a move that cannot be interrupted by the opponent's attack. For example, if a character were to be at +6 frame advantage and then perform a 15 frame move, that would come out faster than any move that is 10 frames or slower, which is generally the speed of the fastest move a character can perform while standing, as mentioned earlier. If both characters are placed into recovery frames, that does not necessarily mean that they will recover at the same time. Depending on the move that is hit or blocked, one person will generally recover faster or slower. This is what is known as frame advantage or frame disadvantage. If a character performs a move which gives them enough frame advantage to perform another move before the opponent has recovered, this is known as a combo. If a character performs a move which gives them enough frame disadvantage for the opponent to perform another move before they have recovered, this is known as punishment. While they do exist, very few moves in Tekken 7 can be punished if they are not blocked. Characters in Tekken 7 have very large move lists, and the idea of trying to learn the frame data for 100 different moves for each character can seem very overwhelming. It's a good idea to first get a grasp on your own character, how fast their moves are, and which ones leave you at frame advantage or frame disadvantage. After that, you need to consider your opponent's character. Thankfully, there are many moves in Tekken that are shared among multiple members of the cast, and having an understanding of these common moves and a few other key moves for each character can help you approach any matchup. Examples of this include the one jab, which is generally +1 frame on block and +8 frames on hit, and the hop kick, which is generally an up forward 4 input, which is generally at -13 frames on block for the user. As this move is -13, that means that if you block this, you're able to perform any move that is 13 frames or faster, and if it makes contact, they cannot block it. It's also important to remember that while frame data exists and dictates the actions performed, it is not the only thing at play during a match, and other things to take into consideration include the positioning of you and your opponent, evasive options available, and any special properties a move may possess. Having a decent understanding of frame data can give you a significant advantage in a match, as this provides knowledge on potential opportunities to attack or defend, and helps you know what moves are best to use at a given moment. I hope you have found value in the video and those to come as we explore more Tekken 7.